Tamoor from the 5. Hope you all have a good weekend. I'm our crew. Try and find some calm and resolve after this horrific fortnight here in Ontario, Canada. Hamilton MPP Sarah Jama has just served a cease and desist with the possibility of suing Premier Doug Ford over the comments amid branding her an anti-Semite for her pro-Palestine ex-posts, which included several disgusting false analogies not worth repeating. Meanwhile, his party has also put forth a motion in the Ontario legislature to permanently censure her in the House.
And lastly, the Ontario New Democratic Party caucus has censured and expelled Sarah Jama over her calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. All this and more on today's program. Calling from a 647 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
This is you.
Oh, hello. Emma, Matt, Bradley, how's everyone doing today?
Everyone's doing great. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Tamoor. I'm calling from Mississauga, Ontario, up in Canada.
Ontario. Okay. So do you are you calling by any chance about the expulsion of that woman, Sarah Jama?
Oh, God damn it, Emma. Why are you suing my thunder?
I'm sorry. See, I like to guess. I'm a gambling woman, unfortunately. I thought the Niners would cover it minus 6.5. Anyway.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about that. Before I do, though, very quick note. Have you seen the update from the NHL that says they have lifted their ban on players wearing pride tape on sticks?
I haven't gotten around to that story because we covered it before, but it's just part and parcel of that conservative, league that seems uninterested in expanding their reach or making more money.
Oh, sorry about that. It just popped up on my feed as like some sort of break thing. I thought it was okay.
All good.
So I did want to talk about what you just said about Sarah Jama from Hamilton Centre getting booted from the NDP caucus in the Ontario legislature. It's been a really difficult couple of weeks in terms of what's been going on in her political life. So it started with her being, I think at this point, the only person in Ontario Parliament who spoke out against the I dare say the beginning. Let's be honest. It's just a chapter of what has been an ongoing saga. But
right.
Since the last 2 weeks, she made a statement in support of the Palestinians. She did condemn Hamas, of course, but also said, what's happening afterward is wrong. And then the Premier, Doug Ford, made a statement condemning what she had said. I did mention this in I Am on Friday. I don't know if you remember. He said a bunch of things that were frankly very reprehensible in terms of, just stock her supporting, being anti-Semitic just because she supports Palestinians. Just ridiculous.
Right.
But her leader, Mayor Stiles, had offered, she didn't really support what she said, but she didn't condemn them. I said, gave very lukewarm support. But now it's completely ice cold because she's been kicked out of the party. She's now, this happened yesterday, she's now an independent. And there was also a motion put forth by Doug Ford yesterday before that happened I think it was put forth last week, but it passed yesterday, to have her censored in the House, as in she cannot take part in question time discussions, debates, that sort of thing, cannot speak in the House. And even though she's been kicked out, Mayor Stiles is still unbelievably, she's still saying, well, I don't support what she said there, but I also don't support censoring any member of the Parliament because that takes a voice away from the representatives. But she's also, censoring Sarah Jama herself by kicking her out of the NDP. So, for all the goodwill that Stiles has been trying to muster in the last few months in challenging Doug Ford over his various scandals in the last little while with regards to trying to build houses in the Greenbelt and encroach on protected land and various anti-environmental acts. I would say Mayor South has lost any moral high ground for this, and F her. And I voted liberal on multiple occasions in my young adult life. The last year's election, it was the first time I voted for. I don't live in Hamilton, by the way. I live in Mississauga, about an hour away. But I voted for the NDP nominee. Didn't win. The Conservative incumbent won. Indeed, all 6 Conservative incumbents in Mississauga won. I'm very upset about that. But for this, I know no one in the NDP is listening to this, but I just want to say screw you. As long as Matt South's the leader, I'm not voting for you again, because this is just atrocious.
It's atrocious, and it's another example, I mean, in Canada and in the United States, of non-white, black, or brown voices being silenced in favor of what is supposedly an anti-bigotry move by these censorious lawmakers, right? You're an anti-Semite. Yeah. You're speaking out against
It's Corbyn all over again.
I mean, yeah, right. And but with Corbyn, it's less flagrant when you see it, especially in the U.S. too, when it's done to Ilhan Omar, who covers her hair, right, and is Muslim, or a Palestinian woman, American woman like Rashida Tlaib, because it underscores, I think, like, not just the silencing of debate like it happened with Corbyn and the covering up of Israel's crimes, but the racism that is deeply beneath that impulse to shut down the conversation.
Yeah, and it's just even more disgraceful, the fact that, as you say, it's about this. I mean, this Sarah Jama, very extraordinary person. Apart from being a black Muslim, she's previously been a disability advocate, housing activist. Won the by-election in March, probably against all odds, given that kind of background. Even within the remit of the NDP, that is seen as this leftist party, I don't know if it ever really was. It certainly might have had that. It doesn't have that repute now. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
It sucks on so many levels, and it's so enraging.
Well, thank you for the update, Tamoor. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. You guys have a good rest of the day.
You as well. Thank you. Calling from a 519 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Sandee from Ontario.
Hey, Sandee. How you doing?
Good. How are all you guys holding up with all of this nightmare of news?
I feel better this week, but it's not amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to build on something that Tamoor called about yesterday with Sarah Jama, the former Ontario NDP member who was kicked out of her caucus.
Right.
Because she was supporting Palestinians. So some key things to kind of factor into this is the leader of the Ontario NDP was upset with Sarah because Sarah was being difficult. Or so she said in her statement, basically, that she wasn't cooperating, she wasn't being a team player. Part of what led to that was Sarah served Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, with a cease and desist and is threatening to sue him for libel over the statement that is still public on his Twitter account, where he says that Sarah supports the, I don't know what is safe to say online, but the R-ing and murdering of innocent people.
Wow.
And no one has called on him to take that down. And it wasn't even like an opinion. He was making it as a statement of fact. And so Sarah wanted to have a cease and desist because obviously that's liable. But apparently when you're part of a party, you're not allowed to defend yourself, even if the party itself won't. Because through all of this, she has received misogynistic, racist, ableist hatred directed towards her because she also relies on a mobile wheelchair to get around. Mm-hmm. And so after she was kicked out of the caucus and was leaving Queen's Park, and there was a swarm of reporters around her. No one in the NDP thought about her safety and how difficult it is for her to move through that. And the reporters were just disgusting with their attitude towards her and how they were blocking her path, because when you're walking, you at least can maybe turn and try to get around people, but you can't do that in a wheelchair. So they were blocking her in, leering over her, shoving cameras and microphones in her face. She had like a small group of people there who were supporting her, who had to kind of like try to box her out from them and get her through that crowd. But where was like the Ontario NDP through all of this? Like, they want to talk about safety, and yet they totally disregarded her safety. And then on top of that, right away, the Ontario NDP blocked her out of her email list, her calendars, and everything. So all of her constituents that had appointments about housing, about getting on disability, and all that sort of stuff, she lost that information. And so people have to try to recontact her. They have to try to get out an email to people when they don't have their email list and everything, to try to let them know that they're going to have to reschedule. And this is when people can't even go to her office because they had to shut it down due to the threats that she was receiving. And so it's
despicable.
And it's just like, this is part of a larger problem, like with media when it comes to this, because nobody has been harassing Doug Ford about his disgusting, absolutely deplorable tweet that he has up. Nobody has been like helping her through all this. And it feels like a lot of the time we get people, Black women, people with disabilities, to run for office. And then once they're in, a lot of people just kind of brushed their hands at that and said, we're done. But too few people actually then continue the support to make sure that they get what they need when they're in there.
Well,
and
they want
to.
Go ahead, Matt.
Caller, I've seen a bunch of people that I follow say, like, I'm not voting for NDP again after this.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who have just been so turned off by this. The problem, like the thing that I kind of, there's no better choice.
Right.
And the worst choice is literally put our lives in danger when it comes to like the policies that Doug Ford is pushing through, the austerity measures of the Liberals. Like, it is, but even I can't say to people, you should vote NDP at this point because of everything that's happened.
Yeah, like, to me, like, yeah. How I deal with that is like, look, I don't view voting as this sort of like, I am giving my moral imprimatur to. This is just me putting my grain of rice and trying to influence the balance of power to the minuscule amount I can. But like, I do think I think we need to cool it on the turning out the vote stuff now. Like, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but I'm just saying generally, like, I think people need the space to say, like, yeah, because voting, like, just broadly speaking, we can talk about it on an individual level. The truth is, voting takes time out of your day. And for a lot of people, they need to decide if they're going to go before work or after work. And that's a big decision. And I'm sorry, like, if you see these governments or these parties react the way that you are, the truth is, regardless of how much we hector people, some people are just gonna decide, like, this ain't worth my choice.
There's an article in NBC News about Muslim Americans in states like Michigan saying, I cannot vote for Biden because of this, because of his support for the genocide in Gaza. I mean, from a perspective of somebody that, you know, lives in this country that's incredibly hostile to Muslims already, and you see your government okaying and greenlighting this kind of atrocity, that is a rational choice. And as Matt said, you can't shame people for staying home in that way because it's not effective. I want Joe Biden to be president. I will vote for him because the other option is a Republican or Trump. But let's be clear about, you know, what these dynamics look like in the macro. You can't have everybody react the way you want them to react and essentially emotionally blackmail them there. That is a rational response. And to your point, Sandee, earlier, it is disheartening to see you have these progressive lawmakers, women of color, and seeing this in the United States, and then obviously Sarah Jama in Canada, where the parties that represent that they are a part of are more than willing to use their experiences as women of color, or in Sarah's instance as a disability rights advocate, for branding purposes, for like what they want the vision of the party to look like. But when it comes down to their lived experience translating to what they advocate for when they are in power, time to censure, time to ridicule, or at the very least leave them on their own, as Hakeem Jeffries is doing for Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. So that is the cynicism of that is so depressing to me.
Yeah, like I totally agree. Like for the past longest time, I've only ever seen elections as harm reduction, but at this point, I can't even claim that. And I've always encouraged people, like in between elections, like especially here in Canada, since our election cycles are so short, people plug in for that short 3-month period once every 4 years for their election, and then they don't pay attention to it any other time of the year. And I've really encouraged people, like, you need to get out, you need to get involved, especially get involved with municipal politics, because that's where you have the biggest opportunity to actually make change. But one of the things, as somebody who lives with disabilities runs into, when it comes to making our voice heard, we can't go on strike. We can't, bring a lot of attention to it, because we're already invisible in society. Like if we go on strike, what's going to happen? Nothing. And a lot of people are actually not able to hit the streets, to go out, to do this stuff because of whichever disability they may have. And so it's really, when we finally get somebody in Parliament who understands this and just see how so horrendously she was treated, is very, like, a lot of people have been triggered by this. A lot of people with disabilities, a lot of Black women, a lot of Muslim women. Sarah is like, she's also under 30 and has had to go through all of this already. But, the thing, she is just amazing, because after she got kicked out of her party and everything, her initial statement that she released on October 10th, she pinned it to the top of her Twitter account. And, she is just an amazing bright light. And I think a lot of people lost hope when they saw her, the way she was treated and get kicked out, thinking that there's no way to change the system from within, which is, to some extent that has always been the case, but people are just becoming aware of it now.
Yeah, I think it's like, this is, there is an alarm by the system that it might be changed from within, is the optimistic read. And you see this, the attempts here to go after Tlaib and Omar. Jeremy Corbyn, the UK Labour Party, absolutely just completely purged its left wing, like people who have a conscience from that party, by smearing Jeremy Corbyn as anti-Semitic. Like this is a tool used by reactionaries, including pro-Israel ones, but like we see in the spending on AIPAC here domestically, like it's not just Israel-related issues that they that motivate them to spend against people. Even if you duck your head but support, progressive policies, they might support a contender for you. And we need. This is why this is all hands on deck issue, because this is Israel. We see this, like it's not freelancing right now. And I think to the degree that we're hearing restraint, it reminds me of Kissinger was playing liberal journalists back like 50 years ago, telling them stuff off the record of like, yeah, actually, we're looking strong publicly, but behind the scenes we're doing all this stuff. I don't fucking believe it anymore.
Sandee, gotta let you go, but thank you so much for calling in.
Yeah. No, thank you. And thank you guys for everything you do. Like, you have no idea how needed you are in times like this, and it's appreciated.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Keeps us going. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.